Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. I see folks from all those time zones online already, and while people are joining, I will go ahead and do the welcome. I'm Stuart Schaefer, the chair of the Cincinnati chapter. So I want to welcome the Cincinnati chapter, of course, and the New York chapter, which is participating in this with us, and all the other P&G alums that are joining us from around the world, and guests welcome as well. We got a real treat. This is our second major AI webinar this year. And our follow-up from our last one with P&G CIO was, tell me more about marketing. And we have got just the thing for you today. We have with us Paul Tepfenhart, who's with P&G. Paul and I actually worked in the same brand at the same time eons ago. And then he went on to be the Senior Director of Private Brands at Walmart, Senior Director of Multi-Channel Marketing at Walmart, the Senior Vice President of Omnichannel Retail at HEB, grocer here in regional grocer here in the U.S. And now he's the Global Director of Retail and Consumer Solutions for Head of Food, Drug, Mass, and Convenience. He is deeply into the Google Cloud and the AI tools that marketers need to be aware of. So without further ado, Paul, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Well, thanks a bunch, Stuart. It's great to be with everybody, back with my P&G family, and so excited to share some of the amazing things that are going on in artificial intelligence. So to get started, just a quick backdrop that Stuart ran through. Certainly got my career start with Procter, and I don't think there's any better place to begin your career in the world than Procter & Gamble. And it's been a very interesting journey I've had from a career standpoint. So I've seen a ton of things in the CPG world and in the retail world, and now in the technology for retail world. I work with hundreds of retailers around the world, helping them with digital transformation. Today, we're going to talk a lot about artificial intelligence and how it's really transforming basically everything that we're going to get involved with. I'll give you a quick sizzle video and we'll get started. Well, that ought to get everybody alert and awake as we launch into this exciting topic. Let me give you some context. At the end of the day, we are in a world that has radically changed as a result of COVID, and digital tools are now at the fingertips of everybody, and consumers are using those, and they expect so much more than they did in the pre-COVID days because they've had exposure to it. They had the time to have exposure to it. They want personalization. They want seamless experiences, and you know what? They pay us back if we don't provide them with switching brands. Really, at the drop of a hat, loyalty has never been harder to come by. And that makes everybody involved in the process, whether you're CPG or retailer, in the middle of a race. And there are so many different capabilities and experiences that we're being asked to provide. So how do you sort it all out, right? Well, one of the things that we're going to spend some time talking about is what are those big pain points and what are those problems and where can AI really, really help? What we see across the board is a tremendous amount of pressure on cost, and how do we offset this cost, and whether it's data monetization, improving operational efficiency. In the food space, everyone's talking about how do we get better at fresh forecasting, food waste, all those kinds of things. In the revenue and profit area, how do we improve the customer experiences? How do we stand out? How do we differentiate? Health and wellness is on the forefront of everybody's mind, and certainly we've seen some examples of AI really transforming in that space. But we're doing fun things with navigation around the store as well. So you're going to see a lot of those kinds of examples. And then finally, from a supply chain standpoint, it's never been harder in the retail space or the CPG space to manage that supply chain. Lots of disruption, lots of unpredictability that we have to mitigate, and getting transparency, optimizing the order patterns, and then figuring out how to handle inventory become very, very hot topics. So to set the stage, these are the things we're going to go after and we're going to talk a lot about. Where are we? Well, we're in the middle of a revolution. And it's a transformative moment in history, no different than looking at steam power, the invention of electricity, or even the beginning early stages of information technology. It's that big. And fundamentally, it's time to figure out how to apply it in every single one of our businesses. We're seeing today lots of transformation happening in AI. So if you're thinking about it, unfortunately, I would say you're already behind. You need to be doing some of it. And that helps you really figure out what next and where are my biggest opportunity areas. So when we think about the 5 buckets that I would call them that I'm seeing the most activity in, it's in the discovery. This is the customer experience. How do I find the items? How do I put those items in front of the customers that they are really looking for, that is right for them? And we're seeing Macy's doing a ton of things in this arena, leveraging artificial intelligence, powering their discovery journey. And secondly, we're seeing a lot of conversation and retention kinds of activities with voice, and that's really being poster child. Albertsons really helping shoppers communicate with the business, and that's everything from problems they're having with their orders to figuring out when they can arrive, to scheduling things, to getting questions answered. So it goes all the way to the call center. When we think about the supply chain world and really streamlining our cost structure, we're seeing AI come to life in the inventory space. And Carrefour is a great example of where they've done this. They started out by saying, hey, look, can you help us with a few items, do some demand forecasting? And we leveraged AI on top of their wonderful data set and started doing that. And then all of a sudden they said, well, gosh, if we can get better forecasts, can't we do something with inventory and be able to streamline and get some cash out of the system from a carrying cost standpoint? And that wasn't enough. They then went on to say, well, gosh, what should we be carrying in each of these stores? And at the scale of their stores, it became apparent that this was another challenge for AI. And so they were able to create discrete assortments in every store, leveraging AI, that then further optimized their upstream supply chain. And then that led to figuring out what needed to be carried in the distribution centers. And when that whole journey was done, the amount of cost that had come out of the system was just amazing. And this wasn't, oh, let's go buy a Google tool and replace our whole supply chain. This was all things that were done on top of and connected to their existing systems. So all the folks that touched those systems really didn't feel anything different. What they found was better and better and better answers, leveraging the AI. From a fulfillment standpoint, certainly Ocado is a very, very progressive company. They're rerunning their last mile. Obviously, they're a grocer that is an online grocer that delivers to home at a massive scale. And what they've been able to do is rerun every 2 minutes their configuration. What's going to go on a truck? What orders? What's the order? What's the route? How are they going to optimize that entire network for cost, for sustainability reasons? Reducing the miles obviously turns into real money. It also turns into a much more dependable customer experience. And so at the end of the day, they've leveraged AI on that very complicated transportation algorithm. Certainly not hard to do it on our networks of supply chain kinds of capabilities. If you can do it in last mile at the scale and at the complexity and at the dynamic nature, doing it for inbound supply chains is really quite easy. And then finally, the last piece from a Kroger standpoint, working hard on associate productivity, and say, gosh, we worked on associate productivity for generations. Well, this is a whole different ballgame, because what you've got is a database of the skills of your employees, and you've got what are the tasks that are necessary, and then you have constant optimization around what is the next most important task and who can do it and how do we assign it. And so it's a very complicated assignment algorithm that's dynamic in nature, based on the battlefield we call a store. And with all that dynamic activity going on, the next task is surfaced to the right person. And you're seeing Kroger pick up tremendous productivity across the areas that they're implementing this. They love the project so much. It was a 6-month pilot that after 60 days got scaled. And they're continuing to both scale it across all stores and scale the amount of activities that it's responsible for allocating. So just a few light touches on what is AI doing today from a use case standpoint. Before I get into the generative AI component, fundamentally it's about data, because AI is not Harry Potter's magic wand. It is really on top of the data. How can it see at scale patterns that humans just could never pick up on? And then how do you leverage that and provide better insight for action? And whether we're talking about product data, supply chain data, consumer data, doesn't matter. And preferably eventually all of it becomes under the purview of AI. And we're going to look at a bunch of use cases, but I wanted to establish a foundation that it's critical that getting the data house in order is job one. And I don't mean, hey, let's have a 3-year project to get our data cleaned up. I mean, let's clean up this part of the data that's necessary for this use case so that we can get an ROI today. I work in the real world. I work in a grocery world for most of my career. And at the end of the day, you get 2 or 3% profit. So it's got to be speed to value, and it's got to be learn a lot, invest a little, learn a lot, invest a little, and repeat, right? That's got to be the sequence. What do you get out of all this? Well, one of the things on the consumer facing side is the ability to personalize, the ability to really change how you're interacting with the consumer and personalize that communication. And whether that's changing the digital experiences that they're getting when they shop online with your products, or whether they're exploring more information about your products, and personalizing that discovery experience, promotions that are tailored to the individual shoppers, all kinds of opportunities, including to complete the cycle, something with customer service, right? How do I call up and you know me, and it's seamless and it's end to end, you know what I bought, you know what I like, and the customer experience of call center goes through the roof. This is oftentimes where brands are falling down pretty significantly. Let me shift gears and put it in fifth now, and we're going to start talking about Gen AI, because it is that kind of an accelerant that we think about. Now, when I talk Gen AI, it's really important we establish some fundamentals. And one of the fundamentals is there's a big difference between consumer models and enterprise models, right? Consumer models, we know Chat GPT, Google has Bard. Those models are really fun to play with, and they offer a lot of insight. And you can see some of the fun things here in the little quotes that you can ask them. Don't be confused that those things are useful or should be used in an enterprise world, because in the enterprise world you have many more considerations, and the number one of all is, how do I control my data? And that is really important. I know of numbers of cases where companies have fallen in love with the consumer version of things, and they've been asking it all kinds of what ultimately are pretty proprietary questions, using that information and then following up with questions. These models are smart, and they learn from those queries, and they continue to evolve from those queries. And so you can be bleeding your IP using a consumer model. And so I really encourage you to take a hard look at how that's going on within your company, if that's not an area you focused on. But from an enterprise standpoint, you've got to be able to manage your costs on this. This is a phenomenal tool, but it's also not cheap. and you want to have the right size model for the right purpose, and that's a huge consideration. Again, I mentioned control of your data so that it stays within your environment and nothing that's getting interacted with winds up making some public model or some competitor smarter as a result. You can look around some of the other key considerations like fraud and security. And of course, how could I miss the fact that you need to have a model that is not going to create what we call hallucinations and be able to manage the data set for the questions that are going to be asked in a way that it delivers accurate and, most importantly, explainable. Where'd that answer come from? How can I do further research and ensure that it's a right answer? And you get involved in some of these LLM models, and we always go to the medical case, right? Because that's where you can immediately imagine the liability. It also could be in the food space when you're talking about allergens and all. You can't have these hallucinations. So enterprise models, big difference. Let's talk about enterprise models for your business. By the way, there's been a whole bunch of noise about large language models, generative AI, all these kinds of things. And make no mistake, Google's been about this for a very long time. And in 2017, the first white paper on this topic was issued, and it was written by Google. And ever since then, there's been a continuous progression of what we would call the large language model ecosystem until we get to where we are today. Now, you say, well, okay, but certainly ChatGPT was first to market. Well, they were first to make a splash, and that is great. And could Google have answered that? Sure, absolutely. But back to our principles, responsible AI at the foundation. We have to be accountable to the people. We have to make sure it's tested and is safe and is not going to be highly suspect from the answers that it's giving, socially beneficial. You can see our foundational principles, and so not ready for prime time is why that we incubated this thing for 7 years. Let's step back and talk definitions for a second. What is a large language model? What is generative AI? Because AI has been around forever, and the examples I showed you before from an AI standpoint were not necessarily generative in their initial implementations. So a large language model is nothing more than a machine learning algorithm that can recognize, predict, and generate human language. So you can have a conversation. That's great. It understands you. It provides contextually relevant answers, and it's an enormous thing, and it's a costly thing, and it's pre-trained on a set what we call corpus or body of data, and that body is what is going to represent the answers it's providing, right? And those answers will only be as good as the data that it's trained on. So where do hallucinations come from? They come from probably less than factual data, and then the extrapolation of that less than factual data. So large language models, to become generative, it has to produce new to the world content. That's what generative AI is. It's a large language model that produces new to the world content. So let's play this out for a second. You've got the Library of Congress, let's say. And in the Library of Congress, you make that your body of data. Well, okay, we process all that data into a large language model. It's enormous, and it's learned everything in there. And so you come along and you say, okay, gosh, what's a cat? And easy enough, right? It can provide you the definition of a cat very, very easily. And that's even borderline as to whether that's generative, because it's probably a direct search that you could use standard AI in. But where does it become generative? It becomes generative when I say to it, hey, I've got 3 kids, and one of my kids is allergic to cat dander, and we take long trips, and we like this kind of lifestyle. What cat might be right for our family? And then it comes back and it processes all the parameters of your query, and it processes the corpus of data, and it comes back and there's this exotic hairless kind of cat that costs $5,000, and boom, that's and it'll tell you all about the cat and how you have to take care of it. That's generative AI. It's synthesizing a whole bunch of things and acting like a trusted advisor, somebody that is an expert in the field that you can rely on when it's been trained on the right kind of data. So as we think about the principles for responsible AI, it's about governing your data. It's your data is your data. You've got to keep control of it. You've got to match the cost to the value that it's creating. And at the end of this talk, we're going to spend a little time talking about where should I start? Because I'll tell you, not everything is generative. Don't run around with a hammer. And I see this all over the place, and start saying, oh, let's use generative AI on all these things. Well, that may or may not be the right choice for it. So you have to go through some criteria. We've got to be factually grounded, critical to be accurate. And the bar for accuracy, depending on what the use cases are, can be significantly different. So, and of course, from a enterprise standpoint, want to be easy to get started, easy to implement, and then it's got to be scalable and manageable at scale. Right? You don't want to have 50 different large language models you're trying to keep up with. So those are kind of the principles. I couldn't stand it to not put this slide in there. It's your data is your data, and it's got to be resident in your control. If I haven't made any other point today, that would be the one, so that as you develop IP, as your model becomes smarter for the applications you've chosen, that you have the control, period. Now, where is generative AI gaining traction for retail, for CPG? It's really in three areas that I see it the most right now. It's generating and optimizing content, particularly in the marketing space. We're going to look at that. It's creating conversational commerce experiences, and it's improving and automating operations. Those are three areas that we're going to explore. And I think all of them have good ROI. They have good traction in the market with some examples, and are really fertile places for you to hunt. So one of the let me stop that one because that's going to come out in French.
Créé avec Google Cloud, un outil expérimental.
Okay, but let me tell you a little bit about Care4. And what Care4 has done is they've created what they call a marketing studio. And so from a concept, we're talking about the ability to digest all past campaigns that have gone on from a marketing standpoint. And we're enabling marketers to come in and through language prompts, I would like to target, teen, beauty space, and whatever your prompt parameters need to be, you're just complex prompt, and then it's going to take the corpus of data and what it's learned about successful campaigns and generate for you an entire campaign, including what products from your existing catalog and potentially some suggestions for some new products, to be able to have a comprehensive recommendation for the marketing team. It's a force multiplier. It's not a replacement for the marketers. It is a tool at their fingertips that can 10x their capability. It can certainly extend their creativity. And if you keep the human in the loop, then you're in a position to take the best of both and really improve your productivity and the effectiveness of your campaigns. And that's exactly what Care4 has done. And they use it to generate this campaign idea, but beyond that, they're generating the assets. What would the creative look like? What would the components, and what is the imagery for the products? And is it on brand? Is it on design theme? Can all be factored into the conversation that the marketer's having. And this is where Care4 really believes the power of Gen AI exists. I'll tell you what, it's pretty darn amazing. And so looking at some of the components of this, for example, they're leveraging the Gen AI for both the imagery and the copy. So it creates what we would have as product descriptions and the marketing language that we want. We can change the backgrounds based on the tone or the feel. How many photo shoots would this take, and how long would it take? This is seconds. You can change to the background that fits the theme. And it's quite amazing. And we'll look at it in a minute, but you can even take a look at product and packaging and how that ought to change. When we get into the attributes for the product, this is pretty darn amazing. How about the new line that's coming in? How do we quickly create relevant copy? How do we quickly create all the attributes that need to go in a product catalog to support the kinds of search and the kinds of activities from personalization that you want to do. That doesn't mean you've taken the human out of the loop. They need to review it. They need to edit it and polish it. But at scale, it is at least a 10x multiplier in terms of what you can get done in the product world. So pretty darn amazing stuff. Here we are on product innovation and design assistance. Let's train it on all our consumer research. Let's understand what is working in the marketplace, maybe product space we're not occupying. And from that model, we can generate concepts. What concepts might be highly likely to succeed through this generative AI kind of an approach. Pretty eye-opening kind of an example, and we do have several customers who unfortunately will not be named that are using it in the product innovation space now for just this use case. You can play with it on design too. It's not singularly on the content side. How do we take the imagery and how do we take the product? It can be packaging or it could be the actual product to customize it in ways that you want. I can foresee a day, excuse me, where you're able to do personalized product just from this methodology. Folks can, even on your website, customers could call in and say, I'd love this shoe with these kinds of attributes and in these colors, and it physically renders exactly what that would look like. And then all we need is the manufacturing process to be able to keep up with it from a customization standpoint. But the power is there. And we can actually get into some of the 3D printing concepts for the back end fulfillment side. When we think about moving to the second bucket, which is conversational commerce, there's lots of excitement that's been going on in this space. My favorite example is what's going on at Wendy's. Wendy's is thinking about how they can transform the experience at fast food. And I don't know, I don't want to take a shot at fast food, but I can't remember the last time I pulled through fast food with a family and got the order exactly the way I specified it. There's kind of this challenging disconnect that goes on. Well, Wendy's is obsessed with the customer and obsessed with solving that problem, and they're using Gen AI now on their ordering system, and it's a phenomenal use case because you come in there and you're having a conversation with the screen, but it's really a conversation with their absolute best person who works the drive up, and it's every single person every single time, because it's able to interact with them from that knowledge base. And it creates the right order, no matter how customized or tailored. It presents it back on the screen, the customer validates it, and then the internal processes are also changing so that their execution inside becomes much more flawless. But they're using their resources to maximize execution rather than this language challenge that has been going on in the ordering process of fast food. So really an exciting case. They call it Fresh AI, and it's transforming the QSR space. Let's talk about shopper experiences as well. A lot of conversation goes on about what is search and how is search going to be transformed through generative AI. Well, let's go through a quick history lesson. The first generation was text matching, right? And if you said chocolate almond milk, you would get chocolates, you would get almonds, and you would get every combination of those words that were found in a product catalog. Okay, that was a start, and we didn't have anything, and that was way better than leafing through 25,000 items in a grocery store. Then it came to the second generation where merchants went in there and wrote rules, and they figured out what were the most common things that got searched on, and then they merchandised off of those words rather than letting the query match singularly do it. And then we moved to the world of AI, and this is where we were a year or two ago, where AI was understanding the query, and it understood that chocolate almond milk and what specific brand, and candidly what that particular shopper meant when she said chocolate almond milk, right? What size is it? All those kinds of things. So it became much more personalized once it was AI driven. But now generative AI comes along, and the questions are changing. And this is actually a two-pronged problem, because one of the things that's happening is we're all querying differently. We're now writing sentences and descriptions of things, etc. Those aren't text matches. So the search engines that are still in the text match world are really struggling to interact with the customer. And now I can type best tasting milk alternative, right? And all of a sudden, chocolate almond milk is one of the answers, particularly if I buy a lot of it. And I also may be inferring that I'm using it as a creamer for coffee, depending on what and what I phrase and what I historically have done. So that AI is stepped to the next level. And again, Gen AI and large language models are interactive. So I say best tasting milk alternative. It may come back and ask for a clarifying question before it wastes your time with a whole bunch of products. So you're now in the world of a much better experience. Again, a trusted advisor who can counsel you and ultimately speeds up the whole interaction to drive a much higher conversion. In the world of conversational commerce, we also have some amazing stuff that's going on with Priceline. And Marty Broadbeck's got a very grand vision that ultimately that Priceline is going to become the full travel concierge. It's not about booking a hotel or an auto or a flight. It's about what experience am I going to try to have. And so they imagine I would love a wonderful fall trip in New England to see the colored leaves, and I want to see some things that I never see here in Texas. That was a personal example, actually. And so what winds up happening is they are in position from that context to ask you a few more questions if needed, and to map out an experience that says flights and hotels and auto or transport or connections, to have the experience that I want for the price that I want, all through this generative experience creation process. So another great example of where conversational commerce is being used. I'm not going to run the video on this given where we are on time, but Spoon Guru is a really fabulous company that what they do is they take your product catalog in the food space and they attribute it with all kinds of nutritional and health factors inside your product catalog. And again, I said everything starts with data, and then you can do generative on top. The video shows generative AI, and you can go on YouTube and search Spoon Guru generative AI and see the video. But what it'll allow them to do is then they can do meal planning, they can do recipes, or you can just start exploring products. And because they've gotten that attribution, they have a large language model layer on top, so you can interact with it and find what you're looking for across all the dimensions of recipe, etc. So a really great, I think, use case for a pretty challenging problem for all of us. Oh, didn't mean to run it. We also have several other companies that are working on conversational interactions, and those AI assistants have become so much more intelligent, and you can go just like you would talk to somebody on the phone, scheduling an appointment, talking about variants, understanding the difference between alloys that are in a bicycle, and get the right one for me. It's phenomenal in terms of how much better the experience is. And again, I always go back to conversational commerce is about taking your absolute best, most knowledgeable employee, putting them in the interaction and helping consumers find what they want, including why that product is the right fit. So pretty amazing, and it goes all over the map. In this particular example, after the bike is purchased, the thing comes back and says, hey, where would you like to have a suggested trail ride, given what you said, and it looks in the local area and starts making recommendations. So it's about an end-to-end experience. It's not the singular little thing that it used to be around finding a product, etc. It's about how to use it, and through that, the benefits of the product can be manifest. We see it in conversations in customer experience spaces, and this is in the call center world. Oftentimes, here's Safeway and Albertsons who have adopted it, and they use it for product information. They also use it for online order availability and a whole bunch of other interactions that you want to be able to have. But it provides that natural conversation, and across all modalities, really. Our friends at Ulta have done some really interesting things and gone beyond just the conversational. So they're having that interaction, but they then are putting augmented reality on top of it and allowing the customer to see themselves in the products that they're talking about. And that leads to a very high satisfaction when the products arrive, whether those are shipped to them or they come to the store. They know what to expect. And this has been shown to improve loyalty tremendously, because it's a trusted advisor now and at your fingertips. I thought I'd run a fun CPG example here around Coca-Cola on how they're working on a loyalty program and campaign.
Hello, I'm the Coca-Cola North America virtual agent. I've sent you a link to the Coke Call companion, which can make this call more interactive. How can I help you today?
Hi, I'm in the store right now. My daughter Kayla wants me to get some new video game Coke. Which one is that?
I'm happy to help. Coca-Cola Ultimate is our new flavor creation with League of Legends.
Yes, League of Legends. That's it. Okay.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
Okay, I think I found it, but I don't see anything about the game on the bottle.
If you send me a picture, I can confirm you are looking at the right thing.
Okay, one sec.
Take your time.
Here you go.
Yep, that's it, the bronze one.
What does this have to do with League of Legends?
This new Coca-Cola Creations flavor is XP. It is meant to evoke the feeling of gaining experience points in the game. You can also scan the QR code on the beverage to unlock League of Legends emotes and other interactive experiences like a new Instagram filter that lets you view yourself in the style of League of Legends emotes.
What is an emote?
I couldn't find the answer on Coca-Cola.com, but I know this from my knowledge. An emote is a collection of icons or animations used in multiplayer games to communicate. Emotes are a simple and effective way to communicate when players don't speak the same language or the game is so fast-paced it is difficult to type.
Wow, got it. Kind of like emoji.
Yes, I suppose you are right. Is there anything else I can do for you?
Does this Ultimate have more caffeine than regular Coke?
And you get the point. It can go on. None of the details of the game matter in our conversation. What does matter is the fact that it's a conversation, that it is the ability to interact just like you would with a human, again, with the maximum amount of knowledge and consistency. There's a lot of other areas we can improve operations in, and enhance business intelligence is one such example. We get into the world of, in my world, I always wanted to know how the campaign was doing, and I wanted multiple interaction points because we wanted to either adjust it, expand it, contract it. How do we get the most bang for our buck as we're learning live? And unfortunately, most of that turned over to the BI team, and you would ask it many questions, and they give you an answer, and you go back, and 2 weeks later, you really had a good view of how the campaign had run. Totally impossible to use it in flight, and oftentimes you were on to your next campaign that was entirely different before you had anything meaningful to have gleaned from it. We're now talking about real time. We're now talking about seconds instead of days and weeks, and the ability to extrapolate that data at scale and be able to answer in-flight examples. Now, you can do this generally across your business. You can do it campaign specific. You can do it in whatever scope you want. but it's a very powerful tool. And the most important thing, I think, is we're not talking about SQL queries and pulling data out of an old database. We're talking about being able to type questions. We're talking about, hey, why is the campaign performing better in the Southeast than it is in the Northwest? Which demographic segment is been seeing the most lift? Whatever question you can come up with, it can immediately go through and assess it and provide. And that provides you with the power to activate, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? All the upstream analysis goes into how do you activate and make a better campaign as it goes, or on to the next one. Document search and synthesis is another area of operational improvement. Contracts, we see this often, where so much information is piled into the files, and what's our status? And some folks, mall operators who have many customers, many contracts in place, but all our supplier contracts as a CPG or even as a retailer. I can ask any question. What's the most common term on a particular contract or across contracts, and be able to look at examples. But it's not constrained to contracts. It's any repository of information that you want to be able to quickly assess, correlate, examine across. Another fun way from an operational standpoint is in the code development space. So you train it on your code standards, and you train it on all the existing code base, and then you can write English prompts to have it generate additional code that will be included in your code base. So this is such a force multiplier to speed up code development. Now, it's not a solution that you still don't need engineers. You need to have the engineers check it, peer review it, all those kinds of things. But it is a huge force multiplier in terms of the speed and what a person can get done. So a pretty exciting no code almost way to begin the journey of solution programming. This is my my last slide before we take some questions. And it's great to see a bunch of use cases. It's great to understand what generative AI is. The question that I always get is, all right, how do I get started? All that sounded great. And I always say, look, at the end of the day, you've got to be who you are. You've got to have a strategic fit. Your strategy, your OGSM is going to drive your mission, right? You need to follow that and look at where's the biggest opportunities from your strategy that you think that this could be a valuable solution, a valuable tool. You then need to look at, do I have data to be able to do something in this space? Because if you don't have the data, full stop, that's not the right place to start. You need a project that starts to get the data that you're going to need to be able to do it. But strategic fit, gather the data that you have. Now, let's do a business case. Let's not run off and just start playing in it because it's new, exciting, and everybody's talking about Gen AI. What's the business case for solving the problem that you've got at hand, that you've identified? And then finally, is this really a Gen AI project? Are you really needing a large language model that's going to create content new to the world to be able to solve the problem? Many of the use cases that we're talking about, that's true, but many, it's not. It may just simply be an AI project, which is fine too. But where do I see these intersections being most powerful? I see it in creative assistance. We saw the marketing case from Carrefour. I see it in conversational commerce. We see the tremendous things that can be done with interacting about our products, about our benefits. And I think this is true in retail and in CPG. Maybe even more true in CPG world, where you're starting to build the relationship and gather more consumer data. And then customer service automation is a huge place. You want to be able to have the touches with the brand be always on brand and always as helpful and informative as you can. And there's really no better way to do this than through Gen AI. We saw BI acceleration. We haven't talked about associate training, but you can imagine taking a model and training it on all the tasks and procedures, particularly if you have large workforce in manufacturing, large workforce in store operations. And there's one best way to do things, right? And at the end of the day, how can that be at everybody's fingertips instead of the current training method, which unfortunately in many of our businesses still is prevalent? It's the telephone game. I was trained, here's how you do it. Train the next person. By the time you get down to the end of the line, the procedure doesn't look a lot like the CBA said. Ultimately, developer assistance in the technology space is another really good place to start. But I would be willing to bet that one of those 6 areas is a area that has a significant pain point. It's on strategy. You have the data to try to make a big impact, and it'll create enough business value to really go after it. So I'm gonna pause at this point and say thank you for having me